a step up in quality, and you've done that with essentially the same cast, with Derek coming back, but really the same cast. And really, after losing a couple of longtime assistants that had a lot of institutional knowledge that walked out the door. So my question to you is, how do you explain it? Is it just a matter of the loss in Orlando that got everybody sort of straightened out mentally? Was it getting some contracts out of the way for people to settle down? How do you explain this incredible step up in quality with the same cast?
Well, with respect to the assistants too, anytime you have guys in your program, whether it be players or coaches that have opportunities, to advance and grow. And it's really a recognition of the work that they've done. And I think with those guys, that's reflected in the players and the ones that are still here. And I think our current staff, I feel like is one of the best staffs in the league. And that really goes to the improvement of our team. I think our players have really been committed to getting better and to developing. I think they've done that individually, and they've done it within, the system and the way that we want to play. And we've really evolved as a team, I think, over the course of last year. One of the things that the bubble did for us is it allowed us to really focus in what was kind of the middle of the season on, how we may be able to get better. And, with that focus, giving us, it's particularly without training camp this year, we've almost had 3 seasons within the course, of a year. And I think that had a big part with how our team has played and how connected they've been and what they've been focused on. And we've got a terrific group of players. I'm lucky to have a chance to coach them because they are connected, they're unselfish. And I think that unselfishness, as much as anything, has been a big part of us having some success in this first half of the year.
Sarah Todd, Deseret News.
Hey Quinn, we're just about a year to the date out from March 11th, and what a way to celebrate it with an AllStar game. I'm just wondering, there's so much that's happened over the last year, COVID being one of the things. Are there things that you can point to over this last year and say, these are the lessons I've learned, or things that really stick out in your mind?
Well, you hit a couple of them. I think, as much as lessons learned, just learning in itself, independent or connected to those lessons, if you can take lessons from those things. Certainly COVID, as you mentioned, has impacted, all of us individually and, in society and our country collectively. There's been so much pain and grief and sacrifice. And, to look back over the course of the last year and see, that we're, all of us are enduring, and are making our way through that adversity. And, one of the ways that you do that is, collectively as a group. And in that regard, to be a part of a team and to have the challenges that, that come with any group that's trying to succeed and grow. We've certainly felt that in our team. And I think going to Orlando, and having an opportunity to be together, to play basketball, but also to have that opportunity, to connect and to share, particularly around all the social and racial justice issues. That certainly is a pivot point, I think, for our group, and one that continues. This past year, I've felt like, a lot of the growth and the adversity and the challenges that at least for our group and for us individually, that we went through, there's a growth process that takes place. And I think, even to the previous question about, how our team, how we're playing, there's a growth that's taken place, on the court, as far as, whatever the style of play, our guys individually, and I think off the court as well, in the same context as, guys have grown closer and the team's grown closer as a result of everything that we've been through.
Dan Moike, LA Times.
Hey, Quinn. Good to see you. Congratulations.
Thank
In your almost 3 decades of coaching, yeah. How has your practice plans changed and what you want to accomplish on a practice day? And what have been some of the negatives, do you think, to have? I know coaches always talk about wanting more practice time. This season, it's virtually impossible. How have you been able to kind of get around it?
It's interesting you mention that because at the beginning of this year, I think being in the bubble, the format was so different. I think it really gave you a chance to reflect on how you've done things. And there's always, an evolution that occurs over time. Obviously, my practice plans from, when I was in Austin in the D League look a lot different because, I had one assistant. So there's different things that you're able to accomplish. And so there's growth and adaptation over time. But the experience we had this summer, I think, helped me really reflect. I actually asked all the guys on our staff to dig through old files. And I grabbed files from when I was in Atlanta and San Antonio. We had files from Brian Bailey for when he was in Germany and Mike Wells when he was at South Florida. And you go down the line, and I wanted to go through all that information as I was assessing, how we wanted to practice and if we wanted to make more significant adjustments, because you do adjust over time. But really something as simple as and maybe I'm getting into too much detail, but something as simple as like a template that you have for practice and the way the time is laid out, that process itself, will have a tendency to generate a specific result. So we changed some of that this year. The order of certain things, how we warm up. I felt like the emotional endurance and the mental, capacity of your team, given this situation, is just different, and how do we communicate those things? Do we watch film in the middle of practice? Do we watch film on the court instead of not spending as much time in a theater, which frankly is hard right now because of all the social distancing that we still experience. So it's been a good process for us. We still focus a lot on individual player development, but we've done that with more combinations of players to kind of get them more connected. We've done it more positionally. We've tried to make those things more situational because, that individual development is easier to schedule. But I really feel like, those are the building blocks for the team. So we've done a lot of different things. We haven't yet watched film on Zoom during the year. But I think film is the type of thing that, guys get fatigued with film as well. Sometimes we coaches, we love to show tape, and pretty soon, if they're not falling asleep, they're close to it, and then you have to go practice. So big emphasis on where you spend your time. As you said, there's so little of it, and it's precious, and how you allocate it, I think, is incredibly important. And, it's something we've really looked at this year.
Eric Walden, Salt Lake Tribune.
Hey, Q, good to see you.
Hey, Eric.
I was just wondering if you could kind of take us through your reaction when you found out kind of last minute that Mike was going to be a replacement for Devin Booker in the game and finally get that career achievement he's been looking for.
Well, you were thrilled, and thrilled for Mike. And I think everybody, all of his teammates as much as anything. And I think guys within the league too, he's got so much respect. And obviously you hate to see a player have to step out in order for that to happen. But I really don't think, I think that's inconsequential. I think that Mike being on the team, inconsequential, and that being part of the decision. I think he's so deserving on so many levels, and every year there's so many difficult decisions. So to see him rewarded, not just for this year, but obviously in particular for this year, particularly given, the adjustment process that he went through last year. Last year was probably one of his more difficult seasons, particularly given, how badly, he felt, or how badly he wanted to have a great year, and then to be subjected to some injury and the acclimation process. So for him to come back this year and play the way he has, he was playing that way the second half of last year, but it was a short stretch, and then he started to play that way in the bubble. So this has been coming, but the way that he's adapted and really put it all together this year, and what he's done for the team, it's, I don't know the exact numbers, but when you look at all the advanced metrics, I think he's got the highest plus minus in the league. There's certain things that we don't necessarily see on a box score that give you an idea of how impactful, he's been with our team and how important he's been to winning. So to have that recognized, is terrific. I know a lot of coaches that did vote for him anyway. And you just can't vote for everybody. So, for him to be able to participate in this game, and it stands alone for the season that he's had. And it's also somewhat of a lifetime achievement, that collectively over the years, everything that he's accomplished is also being recognized, here today.
Jeff Zilgett, USA Today.
Hey, Quinn. Apologize for another March 11th question, but as best as you can recall, what was your message to the team, while you guys were getting tested and waiting for test results that night? And then the second part's a little bit bigger picture question. You mentioned the growth of your team, and how incumbent, or how necessary was it for Rudy and Donovan, to find some common ground in order for you guys to be in the place you are right now today?
I'm less dramatic about, Rudy and Donovan after last year. I think, those things happen with best friends, with teams, with teammates. I think the unique thing last year is that the overlay of the whole COVID experience and the fact that Rudy tested positive, and then Donovan was the only other player at that point that had tested positive. So it really called attention, to that situation. And then you're just apart for a long period of time. So kind of the natural process that you usually go through, not just as teammates, but as people, you don't see each other for a long period of time. You don't get a chance to, to address certain things. So that said, I think for our entire group, that experience and, the way that it impacted all of us has certainly been a touchstone. If you do look back, and not that we were cohesive in many respects last year, but not like we are now. And that growth process, I think, is normal. In our case, it's just much easier to track because it was, there was the story and the narrative was so compelling, particularly given COVID, and then no one's playing. So a lot of attention given to us, really as a microcosm, and those guys in particular. So, you watch everybody play right now. You watch those two guys play, and that's a long time ago, literally and figuratively. So, part of that night was dealing with those things. There was so much chaos surrounding all the things we didn't know, and that created a lot of unease and unrest. Beginning with, the way that the game was canceled. Obviously it was the right thing to do, but in the circumstance to be out there warming up and then to find out that you weren't going to play. And at that moment, people having a little bit of an idea what was going on, but not entirely. So it was my job, during that stretch to try to communicate with everyone, whether it be the broadcast group down the hall, the players, our staff. And there were just continual updates about what the next hour would look like. Chris Paul was nice enough to send us some refreshments, which is something we'll always look back on, and fondly for him. I don't know if he would have given us the same refreshments if we played the game. But it just goes to show you the empathy, I think, that a lot of people had, trying to figure out how long we were going to be in that room, whether we needed to bring cots in to sleep or we were trying to find a hotel room, which was really difficult. And, as you got further and further into it, you realized transportation was really going to be an issue. And there were a lot of people that, that worked hard to essentially, get us out of there, so to speak, and into a hotel eventually. But the uncertainty surrounding all those things, And maybe first and foremost, when we got tested, at that point, I don't think anybody knew what that was going to be like. My guess is the people that were doing the testing, it wasn't something that they were that familiar with doing. Seems like we just take it for granted now, but I can tell you the test was a little different then. It felt like it went up into your brain, and it was hard to keep from having a physical reaction. So I still got a few photographs of different guys being tested, and as you're going through that and trying to get through all that so we could actually leave. So there were so many factors that went into it, but it also was one of those experiences. You're just all there, for hours in the locker room. And I think everybody will look back on it in different ways, but it's certainly, firmly implanted, on your brain, and something we'll all remember for slightly different reasons, be it, personal ones as well.
Thank you, Quin.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Varden, The Athletic.
Hi, Quin. Thank you for that answer. That was great. So tonight, obviously, the coach on the other sideline, Doc, I mean, he just got word that his two best players for the regular season are out because of the COVID stuff. And I'm wondering how that hits you, not only as the all-star coach, but then also as one of 30, like, what if that were Rudy and Donovan? And I'm just wondering how you kind of weigh all this against the idea of having an all-star game in a pandemic to begin with.
Well, the first thing I thought of when you said that, first of all, your sincere hope that everybody will recover without, any complications. For the most part, that's been the case, but we all know people that have been through, contracted the virus and haven't gotten the outcomes necessarily that are most common that many of us, or those of us, I should say, that have had the virus, experience. So that's always your first reaction is you hope everybody's okay. And that obviously is the case for both Ben and Joel, that they'll have a healthy recovery. That the event itself and the contact tracing, or people that acquire the virus, it's so different, both those things, but they have the same or a similar impact on your team. And I think it's something that that everybody's conscious of, aware of, and trying to guard against. You just have to be incredibly vigilant. And even when you are, there's things you can't control. And whether it's a false positive or an inconclusive, there's a roller coaster of emotions and thoughts that go into this year. And, I think the league's done an amazing job of trying to mitigate that, the players in particular, their ability to compartmentalize that. There's just so many factors that go into it. The questions about Oklahoma City kind of reminded me, although there wasn't contact tracing, there wasn't quarantine at that point with the NBA, the season got canceled. And we had two guys that would have been subjected to that. And actually, we did contact trace and we came back to quarantine. I remember, taking my temperature every day for, 11 to 14 days, trying to figure out if, anybody was going to, contract the virus. So I reflect on that because it seems so different than it does now. And I think for us, your awareness just shoots up. But even then, it fluctuates. You have to keep reminding yourself to try and be vigilant in the things that you have to do to stay healthy. And, they're not always easy. And I just have a lot of respect for our players that, their commitment to that. And again, hope, Ben and Joel, are out there on the court playing again really soon.
Kostas.
Hello from Athens, Greece, coach. Congratulations for what you've been doing so far in the season. You're one of the coaches in the NBA that has a perspective from many different worlds of basketball. So I will exclude the NBA, the NCAA, and the G League, and I will ask you how much the European basketball and your presence to it has affected you to work as you work right now with Utah.
Well, a large amount. I've been very intrigued and, I think respectful of, international basketball and Europe in particular. From when I was an assistant, I always felt like there were things you could learn. I'd watch EuroLeague games. I can remember Coach Obradovic when he was at Panathinaikos. There's so many guys that, that I recall watching. Pablo Lasso in Madrid. Igor Kokoshkov, who's one of my assistants, is now the coach at Fenerbahce. And Igor is maybe a good example of that. In 1999, when I got the Missouri job, Igor came over to coach with me. He wasn't there very long, and he went to the NBA with the Clippers. But that was a point where I just realized, I think early on, how much there was to be learned. And I think information at that point didn't cross the water as much. There was, not that there wasn't sharing, but just the way that the EuroLeague was set up, the NBA was set up. Sometimes it's hard to watch games. But that process, I think culminating for me when I was with the Lakers and Ettore Messina was on the staff, I was always intrigued. And he asked me to come be his assistant, with CSKA Moscow, and really got a chance to dive into the EuroLeague. I anticipated being there longer, but had an opportunity to come back with a close friend of mine, Mike Budenholzer with the Hawks. But even in the short time, I was there, whether it be the VTB League, going to Belgrade and playing Partizan and experiencing that and having those fans, which, I think maybe Greece could be rivaled with Serbia as far as the fans go. That'd be a good debate. But really understanding not just Europe, but different countries in Europe, how the ACB is different, from other leagues, and being able to take certain things. I remember we named a lot of things after there was a particular type of play that we called a Navarro. It was a dribble handoff where the guy went under and we flipped the screen because I watched him do it for a year. So Barca had an impact on us. And then eventually to be able to coach Ricky Rubio. There's so many ties with this game that gives you a chance to, people from other cultures, other countries, and to learn from. It's really metaphoric in many ways. And I've been fortunate, to have a chance to experience that. And certainly there's a big imprint on our program, whether it's part of our communication system, where we like to give credit to the coaches that we name things after. Cito Alonso has a play called Bilbao when he was there. And, that's been a fun thing for us. And needless to say, there's a few plays with Greek names as well.
Thank you, Coach.
Yep.
Matthew Langone, Boston Herald.
Hey, Quinn, how you doing? Just curious, I know you're going to be coaching Jaylen Brown tonight, and just wondering what you've seen in his development this season that's kind of taken him from what he was last year to a legitimate all-star this year.
Well, I saw Jaylen in the bubble, and I reminded him, and I'm not sure if he remembered, but the first contact that I had with Jaylen was a draft interview in Chicago, before his rookie year, right before the draft. And he was so impressive on so many levels, not just intelligent, but very thoughtful and composed. And, we weren't picking high enough to be able to draft him. But I can remember coming out of that meeting, and obviously, as a young player, he was extremely talented, but you also got the sense that this is a man who's going to grow and evolve, and he understands who he is and where he wants to go. And I think that's what's happened with his game. I think it's just, it's predictable that he would continue to grow the way he has as a player, because of his focus. And I think his self-awareness. And so it's not surprising to me. The obvious thing is, he's shooting the ball even more consistently, which I think is part of that, just kind of knowing where your shots are coming from and when they are. And I think it's just kind of a natural maturation. He's got so many tools. He's able to impact the game in so many different ways. And I really respect him as a man as well as a player.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Cam Buford, LA News Observer.
Hey, good afternoon, Coach.
Hey, Kim.
I'd like to ask you, you're part of this. You helped start this trend of this hotbed of talent coming out of the Pacific Northwest. I'd like you to touch on that. Why is that the case? Why do you think this talent flourishes coming out of that area?
Well, first of all, I don't know who you're talking to, but someone with a long memory. So
I'm a competitor, former competitor of yours.
Okay. Well, I think, one, there's a lot of pride, I think, from players that have grown up there and gone on and played. I'm probably more aware of a lot of those guys than they are of me. But whether it's Brandon Roy at Garfield, I can go back and talk about Eric Briggs at Garfield, in the early 80s.
Oh, boy.
Craig Murray at Garfield. You go to Franklin. Michael Bryant was the guy that was playing there when I was there, who could jump out of the gym. And, then you had Jason Terry and Aaron Brooks and, Doug Christie at Rainier Beach. Rainier Beach wasn't as good when I was growing up. That changed quickly when Doug got there, and Jamal Crawford and Nate Robinson and so many guys that played there. I had a chance to have Martell Webster, at our camp when he was at Seattle Prep, I think. And you just go down the line. Like I said, I'm familiar with a lot of these guys. I keep tabs. I know Brandon's and Nathan Hale and has really gotten, has come into his own as a coach. And there's so many guys that I know. I go back to, Keith Henry at Chief South, and, guys used to come across. I used to go to the Central Area and play, and a lot of guys that would come over to Mercer Island and play at Open Gym. And I think there's a respect among the players there. And a real pride in the way to play the game. And that would be kind of where I'm going with this. That I think there's, obviously I was really fortunate to play for a great coach. Al Harrison at Garfield was legendary. And all the players that grew up playing in that city, I think, are well coached. And, you develop an understanding of how to play. And it's about winning. And you've seen that, build, over the years. And, I have a lot of pride that's where I grew up playing and where I'm from. And to see all the other guys, had a chance to recruit Marvin Williams. We had no chance to get him. He went to Carolina. But again, I follow it very much. And I would agree with you. I think it's something that people in the Northwest are aware of. And, they'll continue to have players that, that have success because of the way they play. And I think the way that, they're just wired to play the game.
And what is the league missing by not having games there playing for the Seattle Supersonics or playing against the Seattle Supersonics? What is the league missing from there? And how far away from that happening, the Sonics coming back, are we, Coach?
I couldn't speak to the latter. And on the former, I would say that you'd have to ask my two younger brothers. Because they are diehard Sonics fans. So I think they're always in a little bit of a conundrum with OKC. Do they like OKC because they were in Seattle, or they still have a hard time processing that? But it's a basketball city. It's a great sports town. And I know the fans there, the Sonics were, I was a Sonics fan with DJ and Gus and Jack Sikma and John Johnson and Fred Brown. And you just, that's how we grow up. And, I'm sure at some point, people like myself growing up in Seattle will have a chance to follow a team again, but I don't know when. I don't know when.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach. Get in the Adam's ear about that, man.
He's got 20 people that know more than me in the
Thanks for your time, Coach. Congratulations on your success this season.
Thank you.
Last question will be Dwayne Rankin, Arizona Republic.
Thank you. Coach, I'll follow it up with congrats as well on getting there as a coach of the All-Star Game and the way you guys have played this year. I wanted just to ask about you guys in Phoenix, so many similarities. Great point guard play, defensive big, shoot threes, defend. Maybe you could speak to the how and why that formula has worked for you guys.
What were you saying the similarities were? I couldn't.
Shooting threes, defending, guard play, defensive big, and just how that formula has worked. The how and why of that formula has worked for you guys.
Well, I think the players, that we have, complement one another, and I think they have an understanding of how to play to their strengths. And you mentioned a few of those things, with our bigs, both, Rudy and Derek. We have pure centers, and those guys, their roles, putting pressure on the rim and running on the offensive end and screening really complements our guards. And we have, two of our guards and one of our centers are here today, which tells you a little bit of something about, how they interact, because those guys complement one another and they're capable of having success together. And then, having shooting, whether it be Boyan or Jordan Clarkson or Joe Ingles, those guys really complement, our guards. Some of those guys, Joe in particularly and Jordan really can go off the dribble. But again, the spacing on the floor that begins with our bigs, and then I think is supported with the shooting. And for us, it's been, a path that, continuing to understand, how those guys can complement each other and how our team can play to bring out one another's strengths. And, that's something that takes time to understand, and it takes experience and it takes repetition. And we've had an opportunity to have those things over the last year.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.